The latest tech.
I'm Alexa. I can answer your questions.
Interviews.
And we are evolving, and we are seeing an amazing opportunity that is happening.
Accessibility.
Accessibility is one of our core values. It's even a part of our mission statement.
This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome to another edition of Double Tap TV. Thank you guys so much for being with us each and every single week. We welcome you in so many different ways here on the TV show. Of course, perhaps you're tuning in, or you do tune in to Double Tap Canada, which is on 7 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays on AMI Audio. Or if you want to send us an email here, why don't you do that? feedback@ami.ca is our email address. Lots of opportunity to send in comments, criticism. What do you like? What do you hate? What do you want us to talk about on future shows? We will be happy to get to those emails each and every single week. And of course, if you want to reach out on social media, it is at Double Tap Canada. And use the hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap, so we can get to those a lot quicker. I am Mark Aflalo. Alongside me each and every single week is Stephen Scott from Glasgow, Scotland. Stephen, how are you feeling this week? You're excited to talk about a little confusion here, at least on my part. Braille keyboards this week, right?
It's so fun. Every time we bring this up, you're always like, yeah, Braille keyboard. I don't understand.
Well, here's the thing. Hang on. Sorry to interrupt you, but like this, in my mind, because we've done a lot of shows about this specialist tech, and there are, Braille keyboards that also have the Braille display on them. Okay. Yep. What would you call that? Is that a Braille keyboard? Is that a Braille display? What would you call that one?
Well, you're opening up a can of worms here, Mark, because that could be a Braille display, or if it has its own built-in memory and capability, then it's a Braille note taker. So it gets interesting, right? But yeah, ultimately this particular device we're going to talk about today is a Braille input keyboard. Okay. And this particular one is designed only for smartphones at the moment.
Okay. Now, what makes it work only on smartphones? Well, I guess we'll find out when our guest comes on. But so yeah. That's this is a Braille input keyboard. So my imagination takes me to a place, and I'm like, okay, this has your traditional, I guess, Perkins style layout, right? So it's 8 keys.
Well, it's okay. So taking it back a bit, because a lot of people, but a lot of people don't understand this, and I think it's a great question. And I'm glad you asked it, because here's the thing: when you think of a keyboard, you think of a QWERTY keyboard outlay, right? So you think about the QWERTY keyboard. That's the standard input most people use for computers. Well, for Braille users, there's a secondary option. A lot of Braille users still use QWERTY, but they can also use the Perkins-style input keys, which are 6 keys, but oftentimes on displays, you tend to have 8 keys, and I'll explain why in a minute. But the 6 keys are the 6 dots that represent the 6 dots of the cell of the Braille character, right? So what you tend to find is that you have this horizontal line of keys, which you can type on, and it's great. It allows you to input onto your device. In the same way, if you connected a Bluetooth keyboard, QWERTY keyboard, to your iPhone or even your iPad. You've got an iPad keyboard, haven't you? It's the same thing, right? It's exactly the same idea. But this time it's in Braille format. Now, the difference with this device, the Hable One, is the design is a bit different. What they've done is they've actually brought almost like the actual Braille cell to life. So you have the Braille cell, the 6 dots in front of you. And I have to say, when I first got my hands on this device, it felt really weird, because why would the buttons be in a vertical fashion? But it's because of the way you're meant to use and interact with this device. Instead of actually putting it down on the table so that your fingers will actually just naturally lie on top of the horizontal Braille
like a traditional
keys.
Keyboard that you're used to typing on a desk, yeah, okay.
This one you hold on your chest, and you actually type. And of course, when you do that, when you actually put it on your chest, I don't have the device in my hand, but I'm actually doing this now. I'm visualizing it for you. But yeah, essentially, you're just holding it on your chest, and you're just typing on those keys. Now, I said there's 8 keys instead of 6. 6 keys to create the various letters, but there's also a lot of use in the other 2 keys. And what those are for, well, simple things like delete or enter, but they can also be used as functions. So you can hold one down, for example, and use it as a function key to do something, and that could be, for example, navigating to the top of a window on the phone or jumping to the bottom.
So they're like programmable soft keys, basically.
Kind of
like
thing.
You can kind of customize them with what you want. Okay, interesting.
Well, customization's an interesting one. We'll talk about that with our guest, but at the moment, there are standard keys, there are standard approaches. So, for example, you would hold down a function key and press the B to create the cell for the letter B, which would be back. Simple as that, right? So it's that kind of thing you do. So if you're going back or you want to find the back button, that's how you would do it. So it's that kind of way of working. So you're using a combination of letters, a combination of commands and controls in order to activate your phone via 8 simple keys held on your chest. Really cool.
That's really neat. Now, so when we talk about, the spectrum of these devices, so, we've talked before about magnification devices, for example, that are typically software driven. They run on some kind of Android operating system, and they use a camera to magnify things. Okay, so that's a category in its own. Then you've got this, input keyboard. Where does that range, in terms of, I know we're going to be talking about the Hable One with our guest when he comes on next, but specifically in the kind of the category, I know you've talked about a lot of these different devices being really expensive because they are specialist devices. This sounds like it's just kind of like, Bluetooth connection to a phone and a couple keys. Is it as expensive, or is this kind of like almost like an entry-level way to get into using Braille on your smart device?
Well, I mean, I would say when you think about these devices, just think of a QWERTY Bluetooth keyboard in place of this Braille input keyboard. However, when it comes to price, you might not think that way, because you might pay $20 or $30 for a keyboard. You might even pay $100, $200 for a keyboard. Would you pay $500 for a keyboard, Mark? Because that's kind of what you're paying for this device, right? But that's actually the low end.
I mean, if they're crystal keys and maybe gold inlays and maybe something that really makes it attractive
if
to
it
me.
had all that, it'd be brilliant. But no, it's not that. And that's the thing, right? But then again, remember, this is a niche product, and that's why the cost is more expensive. However, this is actually the low end, because you're right, there are these Braille devices that are extremely expensive, into the $5,000, $7,000, $8,000, even $10,000 mark. Yes, $1,000 mark. So, you're talking a huge amount of money, but what you're getting for that money is the Braille display as well. So you're getting the ability to read the Braille cells as they are shown to the device, essentially, or sent from the device to this Braille display. And in some cases with Braille note takers, you have standalone devices, so these machines can operate on their own. We talked about the Mantis Q40 a while back here on Double Tap TV. That's a standalone device, as well as a Braille input keyboard, as well as a display for your iPhone and your PC and your Mac. So these devices have very different functions. The sole purpose of the one we're talking about today, alongside devices like we've seen before, the Orbit Writer, for example, which does have that horizontal Perkins layout and has a few more buttons to navigate around your device, but essentially it's the same thing, no display, Braille input keyboard only. You have the Hable One, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, so without further ado, let's take a quick break. We're going to bring our guest on after that break. This is Double Tap TV. Again, if you want to get involved, feedback@ami.ca, our email address. On Twitter or social media, it is @DoubleTapCanada, and use that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap. We're going to bring our guest on from Hable in just a moment. Stick around.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. This is Double Tap TV.
We're back on Double Tap TV. Thank you guys so much for being with us today and each and every single week. And thank you for reaching out by email. We love hearing from you. Comments, criticisms, complaints about Stephen's hair. We love it. It is feedback@ami.ca anytime you want. And of course, on social media, we are @DoubleTapCanada with that hashtag, which is AskDoubleTap. So don't be afraid to reach out. I am Mark Aflalo. Stephen Scott by my side, and our next guest is standing by, Stephen.
Yeah, listen, the fact I've got any hair left is impressive enough as far as I'm concerned. So, back off, Mark. Right, look, shall we introduce our guest? We've got from the company Hable, the creators of the Hable One Braille input keyboard. We've got Freek van Wellness with us here. Great to have you on Double Tap TV, Freek. Tell us, where did the idea of Hable One come from?
Yeah, so this is a company with 2 co-founders, so 2 people that founded the company. It's me and my co-founder Ayushman. And Ayushman comes from India, and from a very young age he lived together with his grandfather. And at a later stage in his life, his grandfather lost his vision. So really from a personal experience with working with his grandfather, reading the newspaper, doing day-to-day jobs, he really found out that all the struggles that also came with this. And one of the big things was using his phone. So really from that point of view, Ayushman decided, hey, maybe there's something I can do about this, or maybe it's something I can develop. And he came up with some ideas that were like, by now we call them really shitty prototypes, is what we like to call them. And that kind of developed over time. So from that first initial idea, it developed with 50, 100 prototypes. So we started testing with multiple users. and that now came to this final product of the Hable One.
Freek, I guess ideas like this take some
Yeah.
time to get right.
For sure, and it was really important because when you start off, you only have really one opinion of yourself and maybe the few people you tested with. But the product only really becomes great when you can work with more people and we have more inputs. So it's really important that it takes a while to develop something like this.
Why did you focus on Perkins-style keyboard input rather than the QWERTY, the standard a lot of people might say? Was it all about keeping it simple?
Yeah, so Braille, of course, is something that's being used less and less nowadays. But on the other hand, Braille is also something that really brings a lot to people. So we done our research and we found out that Braille is really, if you look at people with blindness that are familiar with Braille or that use Braille, the employment rate is much higher. Often other statistics really say that Braille brings a lot of great things. But the problem is that Braille is a bit old and boring. So we thought, okay, let's see why Braille is so good for people, but why not a lot of people tend to use it. And we tried to make Braille a bit more new, so we kind of put it in a new coat, as we like to say, and we really focus on the good parts of Braille and want to bring it to a wider audience. So yeah, it is a Braille keyboard, but actually right now in the Netherlands, almost half of our users don't actually know Braille. So they got the Hable One really as a easy and simple way to navigate over the phone. And in the meantime, some of them decided to learn Braille and others even just stick with the navigation part. But it's really a new way of looking at Braille.
Freek, what's the aim here? Are you aiming at people who are new to Braille or people who have been using Braille for a long time?
Yeah, so it's really actually people who are, if you're familiar with Braille, of course it's a great device because it's really something that's just handy and on the road you can use it a lot. But when you're not familiar with Braille, there's a lot of things that are actually super useful. Just making that navigation over your phone a lot simpler instead of using that flat screen interface, you now have physical buttons. So we really also aim at that group. And to be completely honest with you, that's not how we once started. So once we started, we really thought it would be Braille keyboard for Braille users. But we kind of learned over time that this is something that you can learn really fast. So everyone, for example, that comes into our team, into our company, they first have to learn to work with the Hable One, sided or non-sided. And most of them didn't have any Braille knowledge. But in a few hours, you get the complete basics and you can already type. And it just takes a few more days to have a decent speed.
Tell us a little bit about the design here, Freek, because when I first heard about this, I learned that the keys were in a vertical fashion, so more like the traditional Braille cell. But most of these devices tend to have their keys in a horizontal fashion. Why did you go for that?
Yeah, so actually this design, it kind of started as an accident. So when we started off building the product, it was a keyboard that you would kind of put on the back of your phone. So it would be on the back of an iPhone or Android phone, and it would be there just for typing. So when you imagine it like that, it's understandable why you have to press the keys towards yourself and why you hold it in this weird way. But as we were developing and we were testing it with more users, all of them told us, well, it's nice, but I want to control my entire phone, and now my phone is super thick with this keyboard on the back. So can you not make it a standalone device, which I can control and type? So based on that user feedback, we decided, okay, let's make it a standalone device that can control your entire phone. And from there, we sticked with the current design of having to type towards yourself and holding it in the air. And the reason is it makes you much more mobile. So you don't need a stand or a desk when you're using it. You can truly use it wherever you are, standing up, sitting down, it doesn't really matter.
Freek, when it comes to a device like this, and we could tell the build quality is really, really good here, how important was it to create a really solid and sturdy structure in a device like this?
Yeah, so we are quite a young team. So we are actually a bunch of people that after completing masters in university really started full-time working on this. And with our team, we have a lot of knowledge on design, and we have a lot of knowledge on working with people with blindness. We have some people with a visual impairment in our team, but we lacked kind of the knowledge on really going from that final prototype stage to a really solid product in the market. So for that, we partnered up with a company called Page. It's a really large company in the Netherlands, and they helped us with that final stage of making sure, okay, you now have a good product. Let's make it to a great, durable product, and really focus on the ergonomics, build quality, it lasts for a long time, because it's something people use multiple hours a day. So we really put a lot of focus and effort into that together with our partner to make sure it's a durable device that you can use for a long time. And that was really the focus with them, yeah.
I want to talk about the usage here because, obviously this is designed for smartphones, so iOS, Android. But what about computer users? Can you hook this up to a PC or Mac?
Yes, so it's a question we get more often. And currently we support typing on computers. So just for typing you could use it, but that's very limited. So we are working on a navigation on both Windows and Mac. We're still. I cannot say which kind of screen readers it work with at this point, but we're developing that. And that's also the great fun, actually. So the product that's out there right now supports smartphones and tablets, but we're still working on a lot of added functions in the future. So we can remotely do software updates and things like working with a PC or fast device switching. All these things will still be built in the future.
Okay, Freak, Steven, let's take a quick break here because there's so much more to get into with this Hable One Braille keyboard. This is Double Tap TV. Stick around. We'll be back with more in just a moment.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. This is Double Tap TV.
We're back on Double Tap TV. I am Mark Aflalo with Stephen Scott, and our guest this week is Freek Van Welzes, the co-founder of Hable. Stephen?
Yeah, and it's been really interesting hearing from you this week because I've been listening to you talk about the device, and having a play with it myself, I've found that one of the interesting things is it doesn't provide any audio. The audio comes from the host device. There's no display on it either. Is that something that's planning to change? Will you bring an update out in the future, as in a hardware update that can make that change, or are you focusing on audio only from, say, the host device in this case?
Yeah, so currently we really focus on the part of just Braille input and audio output. We kind of tested with talking to a lot of people and asked them, okay, so for which situations do you use the Braille output? Because indeed, as you said, it would really drive up the costs. And especially when we are also focusing on people who are not necessarily that familiar with Braille, reading Braille is much more difficult to learn than just typing Braille. So for those reasons, right now we really have to focus on the Hable One as it is, so just input and not output in Braille. But I can imagine as we grow in the future that it's something we'll look into again, because it does increase accessibility for a select group to also have Braille output. But I definitely think it would be a few years down the line before such a product would be out there.
Freak, how do you keep the actual device up to date with the ever-changing world of the smartphone? Is it just a software update?
So actually, the Hable One by the phone is recognized as a regular keyboard. So it's not recognized as a Braille device, but as a keyboard. So it kind of allows us to build our own custom mapping, and we also have our own complete custom software to interact with the phone. So we kind of, as long as we follow standards from regular keyboards, we can put in everything based on, we make our own sequences, not to get too technical, but because of that, we have a lot of freedom also how we can build certain things. So we can do our own mapping, we can do our own simple navigation that we like. And we do work together in certain groups that we know kind of what updates will be coming from Apple or Android. And so we're always up to date. And from our side, we need to make sure we stay updated. But it's relatively simple with by us using the regular keyboard inputs.
Now, look, we all love customization, Freek, and I do too. Are there any ways to customize the inputs of this, to perhaps use specific key commands? What are the options?
So it's something we could do. Yeah, it's not there right now because it's really at a later stage. But I don't want to paint the picture too much because it's something we would work towards. But it might take a while. But in the end, yes, people can actually fully customize certain commands. It would be relatively simple. So we're building a Hable app right now, from which you can do software updates over the app, but also a lot of support material. And in the future, yes, it will be possible to fully customize your own input. So let's say you want to open your message app, which is located at the bottom right on a shortcut. You can just build that. So you can kind of give the input to the Hable One. So by holding just one dot, for you, it would open your message app right away. That's something in the future we can work towards.
It's been great having you on, Freek, here on Double Tap TV. Absolutely loved having you on talking about Hable One.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was really fun.
Yeah, it definitely was fun, Stephen. And, have you had time to actually get hands-on with the Hable One yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it took me a bit of getting used to because of that different design. I love the way that you kind of hold it across your chest. I suggested to the company that, they don't need a table when you've got a Hable because you're holding it. They love that design, by the way, so I'm expecting royalties soon. But, ultimately, it's a really cool device. I love the portability of it. And that design really lends itself to that because, you don't always have a place to put down a keyboard. And, that's going to be, I think it's going to be a really popular design. The cost price is good. Check your local stores for information about that because the price, of course, does vary from place to place. But ultimately, it's a good price for a good product.
What do you most look forward to when it comes to a new device like this coming out? Is there something that piques your interest in particular, or is it just playing with new tech?
Well, you know what it's like. Whenever you get something new, your first thought is, what can I do with it? And then once you know what you can do with it, you say, okay, what else can I do with it? And I guess I'm always looking at new ways, which is why I asked Freak that question about, can you use it with PCs? Because as he said, it's not really possible at the minute to, do anything more than just input text with this device at the moment, but he's hoping that down the line we'll be able to control our PCs with something like this. Now that would be pretty cool. I imagine it would need a few more keys, but I don't know. They seem to have done pretty well. I can pretty much master my entire phone without picking it up at all, just with a simple device with 8 keys on it. So who knows what's possible?
Stephen, I gotta ask you a really kind of dumb question. At least I think it's a dumb question in my mind, which is, can't you just do this stuff for free? Like, isn't there ways you can just either do it on your own or some kind of software that you can just do it for no cost?
It's not a dumb question at all, Mark. In fact, if you've got an iPhone, you already have the ability to do Braille input directly onto the device using the screen. It's called Braille Screen Input. They couldn't make it any easier. It's in the accessibility settings. Go check it out. If you have an Android phone, you can enable this under Braille Back. That allows you to do exactly the same thing. It's a simple way, software-driven, of being able to input Braille onto the screen using that Perkins style. And if you're on a PC, download a piece of software called Perky Duck. It's a hilarious name, but it actually is a fantastic piece of software, based on Perkins obviously. Perky Duck, which allows you to use your QWERTY keyboard to input Braille onto a notepad-style piece of software. How cool is that?
Yeah, I get the feeling after this conversation that there's going to be some more news from them coming down the line. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys, of course, for being involved in this week's episode. Feedback at ami.ca. If I keep repeating it, it's because I feel lonely. I just want to hear from you. And of course, on social media at Double Tap Canada, use that hashtag, which is #DoubleTap. On behalf of our guest Freak from Hable and of course Stephen Scott, I am Mark Aflalo. Thank you for being with us each and every single week, and especially this week on Double Tap TV.
Hosted by Mark Aflalo and Stephen Scott. Editing Jordan Steves and Mark Aflalo. Voiceover Anna Vicino. Integrated Described Video Specialist Ron Rickford. Coordinating Producer Jennifer Johnson. Director Production Kara Nye. Director Programming Brian Perdue. VP Content Development and Programming John Melville. President and CEO David Arrington. Copyright 2022 Accessible Media Inc.